National Canterbury, and I waffled.
Ron Mark. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, this is a really interesting piece of legislation to come before the House. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when I first started looking through to find out exactly what it was the government was wanting to put through the House under urgency, I was quite surprised that I had to go all the way down to item number 15 on the order paper dated 11th of November. I had to go all the way down to item number 15, Local Government Auckland Transitional Provisions Amendment Bill. And that led me to actually do what all MPs should do as we go checking our reference material. Went into the parliamentary website and lo and behold, what should I find? But a list of local government brackets Auckland Transitional Provisions brackets off amendment bills, which added something to my confusion because clearly legislation upon which this seeks to amend actually came through the House back in 2009, led through the House at that time by the Minister for Local Government, who was Rodney Hires, and what was known as the famous Auckland City Super City Bill. So reading into it, it interested me, Mr. Speaker, that here we have another Local Government Auckland Transitional Provisions Amendment Bill, and on the back of something like 5 or 6 others. In fact, just going through it, Mr. Speaker, the numbers of times that we've amended, this Parliament has amended the Auckland Super City legislation since 2009. I don't know if the members of the House, even the members of the Select Committee, have taken time to have a look at it. But we're talking about legislation that went through on 22nd September 2009, amended on 14th of June 2010, 26th of March 2015, 11th of December 2012, 22nd of October 2013, 19th of September 2011, 3rd of July 2015, must have been Statutes Amendment Bill, Amendment Bill number 3. Auckland Council Bills, 18th of November 2015, that's the one we're looking at now, I guess. 11th of December 2012, 3rd of September 2013, 14th of June, and then there have been a number of attempts to amend this legislation also through private members' bill, and the one that I did pick up was Darian Fenton's local government CCO's bill, amendment bill, which was defeated by the government back in 2012. What it tells me, Mr. Speaker, is that we seem to have here a well-established track record of fixing things that weren't right from the get-go. And in fact, if I recall in my time as the mayor sitting outside, in fact, I wasn't the mayor in 2009, I was just Joe Blow, ordinary citizen out there doing what I was doing, listening to the debates, reading the newspaper reports, watching the television news and seeing the controversy around the 2005 legislation. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Speaker, there were often heard criticisms about the speed and the level of consultation that the government of the day was engaging with the public, and the fact that the government really wasn't interested in listening to what people had to say about their legislation. They just wanted to ram through a super city piece of legislation and create the biggest super city in the Southern Hemisphere or this part of the world, in New Zealand anyway. So here we are on the back of numerous local government Auckland transitional provisions amendment bills, once again in the House addressing another problem that's been identified. I have to say that this time it appears as though, and other speakers before me have already said the same, that this time it appears as though the government's listened to the Auckland Council, has listened to the Independent Maori Statutory Board, has taken advice from the chairperson of the hearings panel, and is moving through legislation which is aimed at making the hearings process more expeditious, more flexible, in order that it is able to get through what is clearly a massive workload required in producing a unitary plan for our nation's largest city. I guess New Zealand First has to put on the record, Mr. Speaker, that we never were big fans of an Auckland super city. We prefer democracy being delivered at the ground, at the grassroots levels in a meaningful way. And what we've consistently seen, despite all the rhetoric, that Super City would reduce rates, Super Cities would reduce the rate of increase of rates, Super Cities would be more efficient, that this Super City piece of legislation, which we're now amending again, was the end-all, be-all to fix all problems in Auckland, that we would see greater efficiencies, that everybody would be happy ever after living in the Never Never land of Auckland, because the government, the National Party government, had generated a super duper whooper city that everybody would simply love. Here we are again, amending the legislation for the umpteenth time in order to create perfect something that was touted as being perfect in 2009, was clearly criticised by many people up and down the country as not being perfect, and in fact criticised because it would create such a big monolith of machine. It would be slow, bound with inertia, find it difficult to respond to the needs of the public, and I guess that's what this very piece of legislation is all about. Making that big monolith that is simply laden with inertia, slow and difficult to turn around like the Queen Mary in the ocean, something more flexible so that they can actually get through the work that's been laid out. No one underestimates the seriousness of the work that has to be done. No one underestimates the amount of work that has to be undertaken by the commissioners and the hearing panels. We see that the reducing the quorum, I have to say, the idea of reducing a quorum from 3 members to 2 made me sit back a little. Not used to having committees with quorums of 2. But the fact that you are making it possible to have concurrent hearings run simultaneously does go some way to explaining that. At this stage, we see no need to not support that. Looking at the increase in the possible number of appointed hearings panel members from 7 to 10, given the workload, seems eminently sensible to us. Enabling the hearings panels to make recommendations on proposed changes in stages seems eminently sensible, rather than waiting until the final report if one is trying to move the hearings along and meet the deadline and timeline imposed by the perfect piece of legislation that was passed in 2009, which is clearly not perfect, because once again the House is back here amending it again. Clarifying that the hearings panels must hold hearing sessions concurrently and that an additional chairperson can be appointed seems sensible. What also struck me was looking at, peeling through my notes, the departmental disclosure statement, and I've done a quick thumb through that, Mr. Speaker, and all pretty standard. Clearly, Chris Finlayson, the Honourable Chris Finlayson, has ticked it off with respects to the New Zealand Bill of Rights. Well, no surprises in there. Consistency with the Treaty of Waitangi obligations. No surprises in there. What I did find a little surprising is for the policy to be given effect by this bill, is there an analysis available on the size and potential costs and benefits? Answer, no. Well, looking forward to hearing some explanations as to why that hasn't been provided by the Minister in the committee stage. Potential for any group of persons to suffer a substantial unavoidable loss of income or wealth. Well, that'd be interesting. That's an answer on that is a no as well. I'd be interested in hearing why nothing has been provided to us in that respect. Regulatory impacts, there was an extent of impact analysis available. Has any further impact analysis become available for any aspects of the policy given effect of this bill? That's a no. Cost benefits analysis. I think that's the one that really stuck out to me, Mr. Speaker, because I would have thought, given the level of the rhetoric, the sound, the volume of that rhetoric back in 2009, where people justified the formation of a super city for Auckland on the back of reducing costs, creating efficiencies, making it cheaper, that as we go into yet another amendment of that Act, I am surprised that this government, who's prides itself on being very prudent with the management of the books and fiscal understanding, I'm surprised it hasn't been able to produce for the House a cost-benefit analysis on this piece of legislation and how it's going to improve
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. His
for
time
the
has
people of
expired.
Auckland. Thank you.